Hi, I'm Bonnie Adams. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and an addiction recovery specialist. I've worked over a decade in addiction recovery in both residential treatment and intensive outpatient treatment in what we call an alternative to incarceration program. Most of the people that I've worked with have struggled with addiction for most of their lives. I've seen the lowest of lows and the highest of highs. I have seen people in places that they never thought they'd be able to get themselves out of. I have seen families lose hope, the light essentially leaving their eyes, and thinking that there was nothing out there for them to help them overcome their loved one's addiction. Today, I'm bringing you a story of hope. Wendy has 8 years in recovery, and just when she had thought she hit her rock bottom, things got even lower for her. She made it out, and she's thriving now. And she's about to take us on a roller coaster ride of her journey. So sit down, buckle up. Don't do that. That's stupid. She's going to give us a raw, unfiltered look into the heart of recovery. Thank you. Hi, Wendy. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am so good. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today and share your story. So we're talking about addiction recovery, and you've been really open with your story on social media about sharing your journey, your sobriety, your recovery. So I'm curious if you can share a bit about your journey into addiction. And I don't know about like the rock bottom moments, because I think for everybody rock bottom looks different, and I don't know if I buy completely into that, because I think rock bottom can also equal death, situations we don't
Absolutely.
really want to get into. So would you mind sharing a bit about your journey into the addiction, and then kind of how you came up out of that?
Sure. So, um, when I was younger in high school, I was not in the party scene, just basically into school activities and stuff. And after I graduated high school, I started hanging with the wrong people, getting into the party scene, and had a lot of fun because that's when it was a want thing and not a need thing. But I met my daughter's father, and we started a life together, and um, went through a lot of ups and downs, but basically was just in the party scene, just just doing simple things, just drinking and smoking weed, and that continued on throughout my life, just as a social thing to join with friends and do mountain parties. And I never saw anything wrong with that until I've been in recovery and realized how much time that took away from the life that I wanted to live and raising my daughter.
Hmm. So how did you finally decide to seek help?
Well, there was a point in my life where the addiction took over,
Hmm.
and it wasn't about want anymore, it was about need. um, had a lot of trauma in my life, um, and my biggest fear came true. In 2012, my mother passed, and that's when I wanted to just numb out, and it was all I could get to do that. I was in the means of doing any way I could to get the money to buy it, to do anything that I could just to not feel that pain. Um, Even went to the extreme of hurting myself physically to go into the emergency rooms to get the pain medication that I need because I am an opiate addict. I was never really a drinking fan. Just did marijuana sociably, but now that I'm clean, realized that that really was the gateway to other things because you hit a point in your life where that's just not enough anymore.
Hmm. So you mentioned opiates. Was it ever, Did it ever graduate to like street drugs, heroin, fentanyl?
Thank God, no. Um, and I've always took pain medication recreationally for years and years before it got to the point that it did. So I never saw anything wrong with that because it was prescribed by a doctor. Because the medication I had back then was prescribed by a doctor. When I got into the abusing of the medication that I did, it wasn't from a doctor. I was banned from all of the doctors in the area here. I couldn't get any, even if I got hurt and went into the hospital. So I found them on the street. That's where I was purchasing them from. Um, but thank goodness I live in a small recreational town to where heroin, because I was isolating with my addiction, I was not socializing with anyone that was in the dealing realm. Um, it was basically an old lady that didn't really need her pain pills that sold them to me because she needed the money. So thank God it wasn't some drug dealer that would say to me, Wendy, heroin is cheaper. Why don't you just do the heroin? Because I don't think I'd be here right now if that was the case, because it got to the extreme that I was taking massive amounts of pain medication to get the feeling that I wanted.
How long did you spend in active addiction?
Well, like I said, it was recreationally when I was younger, but I say that it pretty much hit the point of needing instead of wanting, probably in the year 2000.
Mm.
It wasn't really deep through that time until I reached 2012 when that happened to my mom. It was just for fun, and before that, I did need it to a point, but I wasn't abusing it to the point that my body would literally shut down if I didn't have it. And after my mom passed, that is the point that I got to. And after risking losing my daughter, I raised her by myself. Um, I'm a great mom. I went to college and worked full time to raise her. Um, I tried my best to financially do it, and I did. But then it come to the point of that social partying that took me away from her, and she spent a lot of time with my mom and my sister. And thank God I had them, but I missed out on so much. And now that I'm in recovery, I think back and I regret it. But when it come to the point of needing it all the time and needing the amount that I was taking to feel something, and if I didn't get that amount, I was in physical withdrawals and detox. But at that time, I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was anxiety. And it got to the point to where I couldn't work. I was isolating. I couldn't go anywhere. And I remember there for almost over a year, if I didn't have it, it was literally like the worst withdrawals I have ever felt in my life. Um, Body aches is an understatement. The sweating was an understatement. Um, the uncontrollable fear, the fear of God that you have never felt in your whole entire life, all at the same time. Um, Rocking on the floor, just trying to find something somewhere to help with that somewhat so I wasn't feeling that way anymore. And the extreme that I was at to do that. Um, Before my mom passed, in my younger years when I was socially partying, my mom was quite older. She had arthritis really bad and was in a lot of pain most of the time. And When I couldn't find them, I took it upon myself to steal hers.
Mm.
She literally did not have pain medication to take when she was hurting because of me. Um, and I don't know how many times I promised her that I would stop. She would hide them and I would find them no matter where they were. I could have been a good investigator because I could literally find them anywhere that they were.
Mhm.
And it got to the point to where it affected our relationship, and she ended up passing away before I could really wholeheartedly apologize to her
Mm.
and do what I needed to do. But I know today that she's proud of me, and I know wholeheartedly that she has forgiven me because that is something that I really worked through in therapy, and just learning how to forgive myself for the actions that I took during active addiction.
I think that's one of the things that keeps people stuck in the cycle of addiction is the guilt and the shame that come with it, because you do things in active addiction that you wouldn't normally do if you were sober or straight, right?
Right.
So sometimes operating from guilt and shame, making up for birthdays that you missed or holidays that you missed, making promises that you maybe can't keep or don't have any intention on keeping. When family comes to us and says, "Hey, I'm really worried about you. You know, something's up. You're not acting the same. You're not coming around for this." And that's typically in the initial stages, right? Where it's like something's
Yeah.
different, something's changed. But then we have that where we've maybe, I don't know, maybe this is the right word, burned so many people,
Yeah.
right? We just struck that match and burnt that bridge because we know they love us and we're going to come back to it. And then they use, boundaries like the boundaries that they say in the recovery circles, uh, you're not going to come here high. You're not going to I don't want drugs in my home. Don't come around if you're using. Don't call me. Don't, any of those things. How did you handle that? Those types
Um,
of boundaries.
yeah, that's the point that I got to that really made me think. That was my rock bottom. Um, I got married in 2011 to a guy that I've been best friends with for 25 years. He was literally my best friend. I partied with him. He played in a band at the bar, and that was my social environment. And I knew him from then, but got so close with him. He's still my best friend to this day. Um, but after my mom passed and I got in so deep, I couldn't work. So he literally was the only smart one in the marriage, saying, we need to take a break, move home with my mom so that we don't get in any more debt because I'm having a hard time doing this on my own. And in my mind, I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to move home with him and his mom because I want to be able to do the things I need to do to stop this hurt. So I moved in with my sister, which is my mother's home, and my brothers and sisters did not want me there because of my actions in active addiction. Um, there was a point where I was working that time when I was there and I could help pay some of the bills. But then it got to the point to where I got caught with marijuana in the home by a cop, and that ended it. It's like if I didn't have the opiates, I needed something to help with that feeling, and marijuana helped a little bit, not even enough. But then after I was forced out of there, I was just staying here, staying there. I remember staying in a cheap one-room motel with my cat, just feeling not wanted, not loved, and sorry for myself, and there's no one to blame but me. Me and my daughter, she had gotten married, and to the best guy, and she was expecting her first baby. And all we did was argue whenever we would talk, because I wasn't the mom that she knew at that time. And she flat out told me, "Mom, I'm done until you get better." And there she was, pregnant with my grandson. And at first I was angry. I was very angry, um, thinking, all right, I don't need her. I'm by myself. I don't need anybody. Doing the isolation thing that addicts do. Um, but the more it went on and the worse that feeling got, with the withdrawals and the detox and the anxiety and the depression and wanting to step out in front of a moving diesel on the highway in front of my mom's. Um, I came to the point where I can't do this anymore. And it wasn't even about I wanted to kill myself, because I knew from what I'd been through in my life that I'm strong enough to do this. I raised my daughter by myself. Lived with her dad for 7 years, and He left me when I was pregnant, and from day on, I the strength that I had was unreal of what I'd done. I graduated from a technical college where I lived with 3 business certificates. I mean, I knew that I could do it, but the problem was that fear that I've never had this feeling before. Is it ever going to go away? And if I ever can do anything. So I didn't have insurance at the time, so I found some. I got some through Obamacare, and I did some research about treatment centers in the area, and I found one. And I know without a doubt that God sent me there to call them. He helped me find them. So I got a hold of them and set up a meeting to meet with them, and had it all set up. This was in November of 2016. And I had spent from 2012 to 2016 in hell. The feelings that I was feeling, that being so sick, is a feeling I would not wish on my own enemies. I wouldn't even do that. But, I was all set up to admit on January 3rd, 2017, but I was so scared. That devil on my shoulder and that addict in my mind, "You're not gonna be able to do this. You can't use when you get in there. What are and all this blah, 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 blah." So the intake guy told me that I could text him anytime I wanted to. So I'd text him and I'd tell him how scared I was. He's like, "You know what? Why don't you come up and I'll give you a tour of the place, and then maybe you'll feel better about it." And I'm like, "Who does that?" So I rode up there and went in, got beeped in because, it's intake, you can't leave. And he showed me around and introduced me to the staff, and everybody was in like the lunchroom part of it. And they showed me so much love when I went in there. I have never felt more at home. And he goes, "Well, let me show you down this hall. This is the ladies' hall. This is where you'll be staying," and walked down there. He had me tour one of the rooms. And needless to say, when I was admitted, that was the room that I stayed in. So I knew in my heart that God was leading this. God was leading this. And I never, when I was out there, took the time to listen to God and what I needed to do. So funny story is, my husband, the guy that I was with, that he wanted to move home. We were still married, still, seeing each other, blah, 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 not. But at that point, I was not concentrating on anything other than that feeling that I was having. And I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, because he's an alcoholic. He was not doing crystal meth. When I was with him, he was not doing any hard drugs. He had quit them to be with me. And so I had prayed, all right, if I go to treatment and I get out, he's going to still be drinking. How is this going to work? So I just prayed and prayed and prayed about it. And on Christmas Day, just before I went in there, for some reason, I drove to the town where he lived in, just because that's where my party life was there. So for some reason, I just parked in the parking lot of Maverick and was just sitting there, and all of a sudden I seen him pull in, but he wasn't driving his automobile.
Mm.
And I watched him get out of the passenger seat. Needless to say, I caught him with somebody else that got him back into crystal meth, and it hurt. It
Mm.
was very, very, very torturous. I kept my cool. I didn't freak out on her. I was just very calm and asked him if he was with her. He did not have my wedding band on anymore. He had a leather band on, and so did she.
Mm.
And this person is not a good person. Um, she is into meth big time. So I said goodbye, told him to have a nice life, and went and got in my car and I drove home. And I was so angry, but I knew in my heart that God had answered my prayer and that I needed to take care of me now. And so that's what I did. I went into treatment and worked on myself. I spent 62 days in there and got my life back, got my family back, got my daughter back. My grandson was 6 months old when I went in there, and she came and seen me twice. And I still hear to this day, um, Mom, I always thought the mom that I had when I was younger didn't exist and that I imagined the whole thing. And when I came and seen you that first day, I had only been in there like a week or two. She said, I seen her. I seen that mom that I thought I imagined the whole time, and I knew that you were going to be okay. And she would bring my grandson up, and it was just the best. And I have never worked so hard in my life to get my life back. Met some amazing people. And then when I got home, me and my daughter definitely went through some struggles. We went through some therapy, one-on-one therapy, to where it was chair to chair, her saying to me everything she needed to say, and it was more or less, I was the punching bag.
Mm.
But at that moment, I deserved to be that punching bag, and I deserved to be accountable for the things that I had done to get me in that position. But we have worked through it. Proud to say my grandson is 8 years old, and he is my best friend.
Yeah.
We are best friends, and she got pregnant with a little girl when he was 2. I got to be in the delivery room to watch her be born, and she is 5, and I am her person. She, all of Cinda's in-laws and that family said, you are the only one that knows the real Kennedy, because me and her are just, and you know what? That is worth every single second that I have been through. Every single second, I can see where I would have ended up if I wouldn't have done what I did.
Wow. It goes beyond playing the tape through, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't sit and think about where I would be if I wouldn't have done what I did, and I wouldn't be here. I know I wouldn't be here, and what that would have done to my daughter, just having a baby. I would I have a hard time still sometimes um thinking in my mind about what I really done to my mom.
Mm.
That was really a hard one for me to overcome and forgive myself, because now I have arthritis and I hurt really bad, but I do the ibuprofen. I have been clean and sober from all mind altering substances 8 years on the 30th of this month. And when I hurt and sit there and think, there's not a day goes by that I don't think about this, how she hurt and didn't have anything to take because of me. So when I think like that, and really the ibuprofen doesn't help, I put myself in her shoes, thinking what I did to her and the position that I put her in. And I was almost saying at first, I deserve this. I
Mm.
deserve to feel like this. And then I had to stop myself, because I had to go into the recovery realm of, I need to love myself. That was the old me. I need to forgive myself. So, no, I don't deserve this, but it's part of holding myself accountable for what I did and living my life, forgiving myself for the mistakes that I made. There's a lot of family members that, not a lot, but a few in my family that has never really came around. One did, and it's like I was never really close to them to begin with, but now we're starting to form a relationship. Um, my dad, my dad left my mom when I was 8 years old, and I never really had a true relationship with him. And since I got out, I'm forming a relationship with him. He's 85 years old. He has bladder cancer. Don't know how much longer he'll be here, but I'm so, so grateful for these 8 years that I've had to spend with him, and I'm going to be there with him to the end. This is a dad I never knew existed. And just the relationships and my life now. I mean, I've had the same job for 7 years. I own my own vehicle. I just moved into a two-bedroom trailer when I was homeless, didn't have a car, living in a one-room motel with my cat. It's just amazing.
Truly amazing. So you go to treatment and you're reconciling your relationship with your daughter, and now you're reconciling your relationship with your father. How have you maintained your sobriety over the last 8 years?
I basically, what I learned in treatment is burned in my mind.
Mm.
When I first got in there and all the stuff we had to do, and we had to do this and do that and do this, I was like, I was so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But little did I know, every single thing in there taught us how to live a clean and sober life. Every single workshop we had was literally not just a thing to do, it
Mm.
was deeply rooted. Like, I'll never forget the first workshop we had, and it was so cold because there was so much snow on the mountain. But they gave us all snow boots and bread wrappers to put our feet in snow boots. And we went up this mountain, and the snow was literally up past my knees. And they had went up there previously and just made a trail. But the whole story of it was they had us blindfold each other. So we're all blindfolded, and we all stood in line. And they literally had a rope tied from tree to tree for a path. And some ropes ended a dead end, some ropes went on. There was like a little bead on the rope that if you were on the right trail. So basically, what that was, because you're blindfolded and your therapist is in front of you, guiding you.
Mm.
The whole story was at the beginning to don't listen to anybody but your therapist. So they had other staff members like, come this way, Wendy, come this way. And I would go off on a wrong rope and I'd hit a dead end. And so then I'd have to turn back around, and they're handing me tree branches and I'm trying to grab those. And, you know, so in the long run, it was like literally the path of life. You need to stay on the right path. Don't get distracted by temptation or this or that. You need to stay on the right path and follow it. And it was amazing because at that point, I'm like, I'm cold. This is stupid. What am I doing? I had only been in there a week. So I was still like, oh. So by the time it was over with and we were all like standing in a circle with our blindfolds on, we didn't even know the other people were standing there. And they told us to take off our blindfolds, and we took off our blindfolds and we're all standing in the circle. And it was almost like I just went on a magical journey.
Mm.
Everything in treatment was like that. When I got done, it wasn't just about a class that blah, blah, blah. It was all deeply rooted and stuff. So I try to remember that and I try to apply it to my daily life. They taught us in treatment about core, how to
Mhm.
find the meaning within yourself,
Mhm.
the joy within yourself of living your life, of what you can do if you don't have a party to go to. What else can you do to have fun? So I've really tried to get into that, been very successful in that. Sometimes it's hard. It is an everyday battle, but I've crocheted. I'm currently recently right now making something for my dad for Christmas, and I'm so excited to give it to him. I'm drawing it, and something that I never could have done before because I shook so hard, and just the things that I can do is just amazing. And I recently moved like into town where I'm like 2 to 3 blocks away from my daughter and my grandkids. So I spent a lot of time with that. Went to a basketball game yesterday morning that my grandson played. Went to a recital the night before that my granddaughter danced. And basically just soaking it up. Just soaking it up. My job is a huge stress, but it keeps me on my toes. And it's literally, I look at it as like how my recovery was in treatment. It's something you got to learn on a daily thing. You got to overcome these things because I work on the phones. Some days there's people that are just not very nice. And it's just a matter of accept the things you cannot change and courage, the saying. And I literally have had the hardest time with my job, and I'm getting better at it because I have a temper. And this job has really helped me. I know God's leading my whole entire life. I choose to call him my higher power. And I know that he's helping me work on so many things inside of me that are still needing worked on by this job. So I just kind of look at it as things I need to accomplish in my life today, clean and sober. And if I start feeling like it's overwhelming, I just had currently a close family member die in October, and he is a huge part of my life. And that has been so hard. But, there's not 1 second that I thought about using because it's just not an option for me. There's no way that I would risk losing my grandkids, my daughter, my family, and the life that I have. It's just not an option. So I just try to remember all the things. And plus, I go to weekly recovery meetings online with a Facebook recovery group. And I love it. I've never met anyone of them in person, and they're all my family. I feel like they're all blood. They would literally take a bullet for me, and I truly believe that. And it's just a whole different life because a life that I've never lived. Because from when my daughter was a baby, I did mountain parties. I went to the bar. I smoked a joint over here. I blah 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 blah. And now this is just. I'm like, wow, I could have been doing this my whole life. Look at all the things that I missed. But I did have a lot of special people in my life through my partying and stuff. And mind you, there's a lot of them that have died from their addiction. So I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky to be able to be here and talk to you today, and grateful.
Grateful to have you here. Grateful. You mentioned accountability, and I've worked in addiction recovery for over a decade, and now I work with families in addiction or recovery, right? So accountability is something that I see as key. And I think sometimes family members want to hold their addicted loved ones accountable, not really understanding that, accountability versus responsibility are kind of different things. And they want that accountability right off the bat in addiction recovery. I don't know if do you feel like that's possible, that accountability right off the bat? I mean, I feel like so people use because it's their solution, right? There's something painful going on in life. I've got pain in my body, whatever, it's become an addiction. And so it's my solution to escape the thing I don't want to feel. I don't want to feel this thing. I want it to go away. This is what helps me cope with things. And then we go into treatment, or we ask them to stop using, and they stop using. And now you're flooded with all of these emotions that you were suppressing for so long, and having to learn how to cope with them, because now you're kind of raw dog in life, right?
Yes.
You're going through it without your friend that helped you through so many things, even though
Yeah.
that was a very toxic relationship, right?
Yep.
And you're having to relearn essentially everything. Everything. You're having to relearn just to be in your own skin. And
Yep.
so family members will come in sometimes and they'll say, I want an apology. I want to know what your plan, right? They'll like, there's this bombardment. And and I have to admit, I've kind of felt the same way. Like, now what? Now what's your plan, right? What are you going to
Yeah.
do now? And it's like, I just kind of want to get through the day. So, what would you suggest to families when their loved ones are going through something like this? How would they handle, I guess, the accountability portion?
What I learned um, is because if your loved one has an addiction, it's really not just their disease. It's a family disease because there's so many people in the family. Some enable,
Mm-hmm.
some build walls, some have boundaries, some just won't have anything to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's literally they have to learn a different life as well.
Mm-hmm.
They have to, and I know that this is hard for them, but in the long run, learn to forgive, learn to move on. But I know in their hearts that they're like, are they really going to do it?
Mm-hmm.
Are they really going to do it? Um, when I was just getting ready to get out in treatment, my daughter was there and it was on a family visit day. And my therapist came out of his office and said, do you know blank? And I'm not going to say the name, but it was a family member. And I said, yes. And my daughter looked at me because I tried to tell her for the longest time that this family member was just like through my addiction and never really had a relationship with her personally. I mean, she would just come and go and I'd visit, blah, blah, blah. But it was them. And they had called my therapist and told them not to let me out.
Mm-hmm.
Do not let her out. Do not let her go home to the family home. She's done this, she's done that, blah, 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 blah. And my daughter was just like, and I said, see, I told you. So right there, my therapist pulled me in his office and because he was offering me to go to sober living. But at the time, because my daughter had just had a baby, and I was from a small town, that I was going to go back home to. And my therapist me, begged me. He said, please don't go back to where you got sick. Please don't go back there. It's going to be, look at all this that's happening and you haven't even gone home. And I really, really thought about that, but I weighed my pros and cons. It was too expensive. Didn't have a car. I mean, just to stay in sober living was, literally a rent payment. Like at that time, it was like almost $400 a month. That didn't pay for food. That didn't pay for travel. That didn't pay for, and I'm like, how do and I prayed and prayed and prayed about it, and I knew I belonged home. And that was a real, real struggle at first. But literally, I do think therapy helped me and my daughter that way. And if that family member is willing to do that, that's probably my best suggestion because I know that they have been hurt a lot from their family member that's been in addiction. And they may not be able to find it in their heart to forgive them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not ever going to trust them. And my best words are actions speak louder than words.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the longer that I went, the more my family member was like, oh, maybe she's going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was others that just didn't want anything to do with me, which was just my oldest brother, but I never really knew him. But the brother that passed away, we were separated for a long time because of my active addiction and things that, problems that I caused with him and his two daughters that I never even knew. Didn't even know I did anything. And the hate that I felt from him, um, both of my nieces were killed. Or well, one was killed, the other one died within the same year of each other.
Mm.
Destroyed my brother. Destroyed my brother. He had pretty much gave up on life, and the guilt that I felt for, what I had done that made him feel this way, took a lot of time to get that back, but I know through a lot of prayers and a lot of guidance from God, he gave me that opportunity to mend some fences to a point, and we were on a talking level here within the past year or two.
Yeah.
And again, another family member that passed away that I don't get to make that up with, wasted all that time. But there's a lot of different things that I could suggest, but I think it would just depend on the family as a whole and what they're willing to do.
Mm.
But in the long run, if the family's not going to try or look into it, it's just going to make it worse on the family member, and it's going to push them to something they're trying to not do. And they need all the love and support they can get. And I know it's hard for the family members, but I know that that's what's helped me because I had the brother that was older than me. Um, he came and visited me in treatment almost every weekend. He was right there.
Mm.
And without him and my sister, my other sister would come too. And I knew that I had them,
Mhm.
and it made me want to prove to them what I can do. It made me want to, get better. And it's just hard with the
Mhm.
family
It is hard.
because there's a lot of people that can't forgive the addict, that will never trust them again because all the bridges have been burned.
I think
So,
addiction takes up a space in the family, almost like another member has
yeah,
arrived, right? And
yeah,
this member is chaotic, but it's also soothing. It's smooth and sly and insidious, and it sneaks in and it dribbles into all facets of the family, and everybody interacts with each other through the addiction. It's like the addiction
yeah,
is the
the
interpreter.
disease,
Yeah.
the disease.
Yeah, and it's the interpreter for all of the needs of the family, right? It twists and turns things, and I always tell, couples that I work with, it's content versus context, right? It's not about the dishes, and it's really not about the addiction. It's the behaviors in addiction. It's the fear that comes with, am I going to get that call? When am I going to get,
Yeah,
not if, when am I
when,
going to get that call? And how do I handle this? And do I have a good enough relationship? If I tell this person I'm not going to be there for you anymore, then that'll make them stop. And that doesn't always work. I think it depends on the type of the relationship that you have with somebody. If you've been supportive and there hasn't been this, oh, now you got to, telling them what to do all the time. But
yeah,
if they move into that space of, okay, well, I've supported you through a lot of things and I can't do it this time, maybe that could be a pivotal turning point.
yeah,
But I think there has to be something within the person. Um, and maybe that's what they mean by rock bottom. Like, okay, I've lost everybody. My kid looked right at me and said, I don't even know who you are, and I can't have you around me now. And maybe that's the rock bottom,
yeah,
right? So I think you're right. I think it depends on where the family is at in that whole process and how they've kind of rallied around the addiction, not the addicted member, because at that point we don't see the human through the addiction anymore. We just see the addiction. They're
yeah,
addicted, and then everybody is faltering over how to be with the addicted family member, and let's just be with the person. Let's put addiction out of it. Let's put the substance, the process, whatever it is, out of it. Can you just be with that person? And I think people really genuinely have a hard time being with that because it's
yeah,
fear. It is so scary to think about, and I'm
yeah,
sure your daughter has thought like, and maybe she's seen some things from you after treatment where she's like, oh, God, Mom, please no, right? And,
yeah,
and maybe she was able to come to you and say, hey, I noticed you doing this thing, and that was one of the things that you did in addiction, and I'm really, really worried about that. Maybe you had and were able to talk about that. in a way that could help resolve the issue, but not everybody has those skills. Not every treatment center offers family therapy or even family involvement. Like when I was working in intense um, outpatient and residential, it was ATI, it was alternative to incarceration. So this was like the last stop before people went away for a very long time, right? And I remember one of my supervisors telling me, because I'm a family therapist, and I said, I want to bring in families. Let's heal the whole system, because if you take a clean shirt out of the dryer and try to put it back in the hamper for storage, it's just going to get dirty again. You're taking people out of treatment that have had all of these therapeutic interventions. They've done all of this beautiful work, and they're going back into a system that is still at the very beginning of when they enter treatment. They're still in addiction. That system is still in addiction.
Yep.
And he said, by the time people come here, right, to this type of treatment, they've burned every single bridge they have. And that was not my experience at all. I had spouses come in, I had moms come in, I had moms calling me and, begging, please help my child. And so bringing those family members into the treatment process was pivotal for these clients, because as you'll hear and as you've heard in recovery communities, right, connection is the opposite of addiction.
Yep.
And if we don't have that connection, how do we stay sober? How do we stay clean? If you don't have people, it's such a lonely, and addiction is so isolating.
Yeah.
So
Another thing that just hit me, and I, with the family thing, and being clean and sober as long as I have, this has hit me because I didn't bring my family into this part of it, but if the family members could understand the trauma that's in this person's life that caused them to numb. Because when I was in treatment and I was going through my therapy and one-on-one with them, they had me write an autobiography of my life. And that sucker was like 15 pages long. And when I read it to her, she was like, oh, that's great, but you forgot some things. And I'm like, what? She goes, you forgot your rape. You forgot the abuse that you watched your mom and dad have, the physical, the emotional, the verbal. You forgot the abusive relationship. And she just started naming off. And I'm thinking, she goes, why do you think you did that? And I couldn't answer her. And she says, do you think because you've been brushing it under the rug all your life and using these substances to numb out that pain? Do you think that's why? And I was like, because here I thought, I'm a piece of crap for stealing my mom's pain pills. I'm not worth anything. And then when she put it that way, I'm like, okay, so it's deeply rooted. There are things that are so traumatizing in people's life. Like, I don't remember my childhood. I don't remember none of it. My dad left when I was 8, and I worked with therapists and everything, and they're like, something pretty traumatic has happened to you. That's why you can't think of it. And there is so many, I would say in at least 95% of addicts or alcoholics stems from some kind of trauma in their life. And if they can touch on that in therapy, and if the family can understand, oh, they're just not doing it because it's a choice, there's a reason for it. There's a reason why they want to numb. There's stuff in there that hurts so bad that's why they want to numb. And if they can understand that part of it, I really, really think that will help them to be able to love them again of the person that they are instead of the addiction that they have.
So powerful. Love them for the person that they are instead of the addiction that they have. Seeing past that. So, what if addiction was like a relationship? What if the substance was, and I mean, we don't even have to look at the substance as if, right? Because everybody has their own, what we call drug of choice, or we have a process addiction, whatever the drug of choice is through the process addiction, right? And it's all a way to kind of numb out the thing that you don't want to feel, but also I think it's a way to numb out the disconnect. right? And to maybe have a relationship that isn't judgmental,
Yep.
to have a connection with something that doesn't require us to show up, to be emotional, to provide, to give more of ourselves than we're capable of giving or even have access to.
Yep.
There's not the judgment. It just welcomes you in and it just says, "Hey, I've got space and time for you and I'm not going to let these people hurt you anymore." And it pushes you into
Yeah.
that, and I think our personal relationships have to get a little bit stronger than that in helping
Yep.
us overcome that.
Yep. Exactly. Because your addiction, your drug of choice, however you want to put it, is something you can trust.
Mm.
Probably more than anyone in your life because it's
Mhm.
always going to be there. It's
Mhm.
always going to be there. As long as you want it, it's right there. If you can't find it, you're going to find a way to get it,
Mm.
but it's always there. It's never going to hurt you. It's never going to do to you what a relationship did. It's never going to, until in the end, of course, when you go through the withdrawals and that. But
Right.
I totally understand what you're meaning.
Mhm.
That relationship is a relationship I've always wanted to have with someone and never been able to.
Yeah. Oh.
So you don't want to break that off.
No, you don't want to break. So families will say, "Why am I not? Why am I not important? Why can't you do this for me? Look at what you're destroying." Are people in addiction able to see what they're destroying?
No,
Uh,
no, not until they're ready.
uh-huh.
Not until they've hit that rock bottom. Not until they have no other choice in life but to pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and get the help they need.
Uh-huh.
Because addiction is a very selfish disease. You
Uh-huh.
only care about yourself. You don't care about anybody else.
Mhm.
I've been told many times by my daughter um, how I react to things now. She goes, "Mom, the old you would have not said that because everything was about you.
Uh-huh.
If someone said something to you of their opinion about something you did, you would always say, you would all make it all about you and hate them for saying it. But because it's a very, very selfish disease, all you care about is yourself. You don't care what you do to other people. You're getting what you want.
Mhm.
And if they're trying to take that away, you're going to do everything you want, everything you need to stop that.
Mhm.
Because, like you said, that's the relationship that has always been there for you, never hurt you, give you what you need, what you want.
Mhm.
Anything tries to take that away, you're going to do everything you can to stop it. You don't care what anything anybody says.
Mhm.
If someone says what you did to hurt them, at first you're going to be like, oh, but then you're going to think, oh, wasn't I supposed to call so and so?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
busy. I gotta go. I'll take that into consideration. Thank you for your feedback.
yep. But believe me,
Mhm.
after you get clean, those thoughts run through your head
Yeah.
on a daily.
Yeah.
And that's what was really, really hard for me at first. My mom and my daughter, and, but it comes to a point in your life, in recovery, that you have to love yourself. You have to forgive yourself. And
Mm.
that is a definite must because if you don't love yourself, if you don't forgive yourself, you're not going to be able to have the life that you deserve, the life that your higher power or God is trying to give you now, your second chance. You need to do these things to progress. You need to do these things to better yourself as a person. Because if I wouldn't have forgave myself, I wouldn't be where I'm at.
Mm.
I wouldn't have been able to work this job that's so stressful every day. I wouldn't have been able to, you know, have owned two vehicles that I never thought I would own, be able to trade one in and get another one. I would have been so angry with myself and I don't deserve anything because I couldn't forgive myself. You
Mhm.
need to be in the total opposite mindset than you were in addiction because in your addiction, you were hurting yourself.
Mhm.
You didn't deserve anything.
Mhm.
That's why you numbed it out is because you didn't love yourself.
So punishing yourself, you have to get out of that frame of mind where you're constantly punishing yourself and
Yep,
oh,
because you feel guilty for numbing it out. But then when you know you can't stop, that you can't not numb yourself, then you start feeling shame. You start feeling guilt because that's the procedure you have to do in your life to live day to day. And nobody else has to do that. Why do I have to do that? So you start beating yourself up, and that's when you start going down that dark black hole.
how do you get out of that? If somebody's in that hole, how do they get out of it?
Therapy.
Therapy.
You need therapy.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing on this earth anyone could say to you, do for you, than anything other than therapy. Working through the stuff that you stuffed. All that stuff that's inside that you never knew were there, that I was told I swept under the rug and didn't really think it affected me
Mm-hmm.
because, my therapist asked me, well, did you get therapy when you were raped? I'm like, no. And they're like, how did you deal with that? What did you? And I'm like, just moved on with my life. And, there's so many things in life now that I think if I see like a friend or I see this or I see that, I'm like, God, if they knew the world of therapy, their world would be so much better because so to this day, me and my daughter go when we need to. Anything comes up, it helps you separate those feelings of being overwhelmed because if you let it build and build and build, it could cause a relapse.
Mm-hmm.
It could cause you and I'm not going to say it's worse than relapse, but I don't know if you've heard the expression of a dry drunk.
Mm-hmm.
When an alcoholic doesn't drink, they still have the mental capacity of being in addiction and alcoholism and doing the things that they did when they were using, but not actually using.
Yeah.
That's where you have to be careful in recovery not to do that because you're going to
Mm-hmm.
be angry because you can't now.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to want to, you just have to, every single day, it's personal inventory. Okay, I felt that. Why did I feel that? How can I, you know, overcome that? Okay, I felt that all day long.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my mind is doing. Like if I hang up on a call and it ended badly, I'm like, okay, how could I have handled that better? And that's how I'm starting to look at my life because you start practicing that
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to automatically do it.
Yeah.
Other than when I hang up the call and go, oh, what a jerk. And I do that. But then I think, well, wait a minute. Why was he a jerk? And I literally diagnose everything now because that's what therapy does. It trains your mind to
Mm-hmm.
really think about every little thing and think, okay, why did this happen? Was
Yeah.
I a cause of that? To where when you're in addiction, you're gonna go, I didn't do that. Why are you saying that?
Yeah.
That's your problem.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything.
I'm sorry you perceived it that way, right?
Yep,
Yeah. There's that accountability.
yep.
That accountability again. So if somebody was seeking out therapy to maybe deal with stuff like this, right? What would they? I mean, it's embarrassing, right? There's a lot of shame around it, and to walk into any therapist's office and say I'm struggling with addiction, right? You don't know how people are going to react to that. What in your experience has been a helpful tool for finding somebody who can sit with all Wendy has to offer?
Um, I guess how I looked at it is like when you're sick, you're gonna go to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna go to the doctor to get medication for whatever you need to get rid of that sickness. I would suggest looking at a therapist like that, finding the cure for whatever sickness that you have inside of you,
Mm-hmm.
slash past trauma,
Mm-hmm.
slash bad relationships, any type of thing. They're going to be able to help you fix that. They're
Mm-hmm.
going to be able to help you sort all that out, put it in a library, and leave it. You're not going to have it stuffed in there, boiling, ready to explode. You're going to be able to sort through all that stuff, and it's going to be painful.
Mm-hmm.
But you're just going to have to work through it. And it depends on how bad you want it,
Mm-hmm.
because when it starts hurting, there's a lot of people, and that's where relapse comes in, is because they
Mm-hmm.
don't want to. They still don't want to deal with it. They still don't want to feel that. So they're still, pushing it under the rug.
Right.
Numb, numb, numb.
Yeah.
Push it under the rug. So it is very painful to come out and you have to go through all the feelings and stuff, but that's why you use is because you haven't done that.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like like fellowship or recovery groups have been helpful in helping you even
Absolutely.
process further what you're processing in therapy?
Absolutely. And my suggestion is you need to make sure that that recovery group is helping you,
Mm-hmm.
is supporting your recovery, is making you feel great about where you are today, and making you feel like if you go into a meeting and you're feeling down, that when you go back out of it, you feel on top of the world. You feel like a part of a family, like you're all doing it together, because anyone in recovery is never alone. Never alone. The group that I'm in, and I'm not going to mention names because we're not supposed to, but during the COVID outbreak, they had meetings through Zoom. And this is when I first got in the group and started knowing everybody. The one guy in there, I didn't meet him personally, but when I was in treatment, we were at a meeting, and I was in my treatment center with a guy that knew him. So I knew of him. I knew who he was. I knew his brother was in treatment with me, but I never personally met him, blah, blah, blah. This is the guy that got this recovery group going on Facebook. And so I would join the meetings. This went on for a couple weeks, and then they start talking about getting, in-person meetings going again. And I'm like, but I don't, I live like an hour away from where they are. I couldn't go to the in-person meetings. And he would tell me, Wendy, we'll work something out. And I'm like, okay. So the next meeting they had was an in-person meeting, and I seen him open up his laptop, join Zoom. He sat me on a chair in the in-person meeting. He sat his laptop in a chair in the meeting so that I could be a part of it. I could hear everyone share. I couldn't see anybody, but I could hear everybody share. I could share. And I left there feeling amazing, just like I would have if I would have been sitting there in person. And it's people like that help you with your recovery, and that I got goosebumps right now. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. I mean, I've had people send me my sobriety chips. They're like, how do you get your sobriety chips? I'm like, Amazon. They're like, well, you're not buying your recovery chip on Amazon anymore. So they sent me one. And it's like, I couldn't make it without it. And what I meant by you need to make sure that the recovery group is helping you and not hurting you. In this small town I live in, they have an AA meeting. And the people that are in it, very small, a lot of older people. There's a couple of people that are serious about their recovery, but not others. I know of at least 2 people, maybe 3 people in the group of maybe 6 that take opiates like they're not supposed to, and still going in there saying they're clean and sober 17 years and not admitting to them, about it. And the backbiting, the gossiping, it was really good when I first got home. And I held a position in that group of secretary, taking in all the money, buying all the supplies for AA, doing this, doing that, keeping the books. And then it come to the point where I wasn't respected. They were wanting to put the money in the bank because this, and I couldn't run to the bank and back because of my schedule at work. And anyway, it come to the feeling that I got, are they thinking I'm stealing this money? And finally I just thought, you know what? I don't need this in my life. If they think that, that's their problem. So I pretty much handed the books over, handed the money over. I'm like, look, here you go. You guys can do this. And I moved on, was still going to the meetings a little bit, but after I had been to a couple, I'm all, you know what? I leave here wanting to get high. This meeting is not helping me. These people are not, I can't trust them. I don't feel like they're by my side. I don't feel like they would be by my side. And I quit going to those meetings right before COVID hit. And I found this group, and every Wednesday I go on Zoom, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I see them people that have been in those meetings, and they're miserable.
Yeah.
It's like they're not honest with themselves. You need to be honest with yourself. If you're at home, because I lived by a guy that would go to the meeting in the apartments that I lived in. He gets so loaded on pills. I almost watched him drive through the apartment complex one day. And then he's sitting at a meeting saying how happy he is being 17 years sober. And it's just like, what?
So I think one of the things that I've noticed with some recovery groups is there's that fear of relapse, right? And your relapse, your recovery can't get so close to mine, and we've kind of forgotten how to have elders in our community that, kind of have these discussions with us, and but then you have people who are maybe new to recovery that come in and they say, man, I'm really struggling, or they don't want to disappoint, and there's that shame again that shows up, right? They don't want to disappoint anybody. They don't want to make anybody afraid. And so they don't talk about, well, I'm not doing my drug of choice. My drug of choice is heroin or methamphetamine. And so I just started drinking to take the edge off at the end of the night, which, yeah, you're probably dabbling in a little bit of a dangerous place there. But the thing that I've noticed is if somebody is in a recovery community and they talk about having urges or cravings, there's like this fear that kind of sweeps through the group. Like, don't be bringing that around here. You're threatening everybody else's recovery. You're putting it in danger, and you have to think about other people's sobriety and what this does to them. And yet, naturally, because there's that accountability, you can't come in high, right? But I think there needs to be an addressing of, thank you for bringing that to us, and that was a really brave thing to do. And so, how have you, like, especially early on in recovery, I think recovery, sobriety is evolutionary. So what triggered you 8 years ago may not trigger you now, and what triggers you now you probably didn't even think about 8 years ago, right? Like the emotional stuff. I didn't realize I was numbing my emotions out, and now here I am feeling all this stuff, and I'm thinking, I need to help.
Yeah.
Send me a life
Yeah.
raft. Somebody
Yep.
throw out a flotation device here. I need help. And people become really afraid of that, especially family and friends when you've been in recovery or you're new in recovery, and you talk about, I'm really struggling today, and then they go right into problem solving, which may or may not be welcome, right? But maybe you just need some compassion and, like, oh, that sucks, what's going on, right? And not kind of bringing that fear into it, because I think when we start fearing it, we want to protect the people that we care about, but we also want to protect ourselves. I can't go down that road, or this is scary for people, and obviously I can see that maybe this person isn't super, or whatever the story is that we're telling ourselves about it, right? So how did you handle urges and cravings early on in recovery, and now versus now?
I think the one thing that comes to my mind when that happens is an instance that when I was in treatment, we were having a group session. And there was a girl in there, and I had just got in there, so I didn't know the rules. I didn't know what was going on, but there was a girl in there when I got there, and it was kind of like a meeting when you share, and she was sharing and broke down in tears. She was crying, and the empathy side of me wanted to console her, so I grabbed a Kleenex box and I handed it to her, and I got in trouble for that.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, you are enabling her.
You're saving her.
You are saving her. She
Mhm.
needs to feel these feelings.
Mhm.
So my best suggestion would be always have either a sponsor, your recovery group, a therapist, or a loved one that you can always talk to
Mhm.
about those feelings. Don't ever not talk about them.
Mhm.
If your self-inventory or your daily list of things that you need to go through each day is not touching it, it's not hitting it, you need to talk about it.
Mhm.
Whether it's journaling, whether it's writing, whether it's finding a meeting, going to a meeting, whether it's making an appointment with your therapist, you need to talk about it.
Mhm.
Because it's stuff like that we never dealt with, so we stuff, and that's another thing that's gonna stuff until it's gonna blow. One thing that really helped me, and I'm not even gonna say help, one thing that scared me, is watching people die
Mm.
when they relapse. There are 2 people that I was in treatment with, and I went to their funeral.
Mm.
And that scared me because I've lost a lot of friends even before I was in active addiction and not doing it recreationally anymore, but when I was doing it recreationally that are gone.
Mhm.
And now that I'm sober, I think, holy crap, how bad was it?
Mhm.
It wasn't a want anymore for them, it was a need, and I didn't even see it. but it's crazy how quick it can get away from you if you don't grab the reins and get a hold on it, because it just takes one weak moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it takes. I've constantly been told throughout my addiction, your addict is out in the parking lot doing push-ups constantly. It's just waiting for that one weak moment to pounce, because there's always going to be that, oh, I know what would make you feel better, and it still happens to me every single day. And it's just a
Wow.
matter of taming that, making
Mm-hmm.
sure you're dealing with personal inventory, making sure you're dealing with the feelings you're feeling
Mm-hmm.
and not stuffing. You want to
Mm-hmm.
make it vocal, you want to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to push it down in like you've been doing your whole life, because that's what caused you to get to where you are today.
Mm-hmm. Do you find yourself feeling that fear when you hear that little naggy voice going, you know what'll help?
I do sometimes. Because it's amazing how, and I never really had it happen until probably the last few years of recovery, but little things have come up where I've never really had to deal with it. I've never been around someone using, I've never, only a handful of times. And the fear
Mm-hmm.
that went through me when I watched them pull something out was something that, it was like almost a story of when you were a little kid and the stove burned you, not to touch it, not even to
Mm-hmm.
get near it now. That
Mm.
was the kind of the feeling that I had. And it's amazing how my body physically reacted from it. Like the apartments that I lived in before I moved here, I helped manage them. And I was responsible for, if he wanted, any type of information to get to the residents, I had to deliver, papers to sign, whatever. And I knocked on, which now she's a really good friend. She pretty much took over the maintenance or the manager job. But I knocked on her door to sign a paper, and she opened the door and this big pot smell just came out, and I was just like, and I couldn't even speak,
Freeze,
and she's
freeze
like,
response.
"Well, what's the
Yeah.
matter?" And I'm like, "Can you sign this?"
Mm-hmm.
And I just handed it to her, and I didn't really realize how physically I was reacting. She's like, "What's the matter?" She goes, "Do you want to come in?" Well, no, nope, nope, don't want to come in. And she didn't know, that I
Mm-hmm.
was, in recovery and stuff. And after that, she's like, "Oh, well, that makes more sense."
Mm-hmm.
But and it's not safe to be in an environment like that. Like the phrase goes, if you keep going to the barber, you're going to get a haircut.
Mm-hmm.
And that is very, very true.
Mm-hmm.
You need to, okay, I learned okay, yep.
Mm-hmm.
And you just don't, put yourself in there, because that's what comes in my mind with the little voice you're talking about. Oh, you know where to go.
Mm-hmm.
She's always, because she's doing medical marijuana, she's got a card.
Mm-hmm.
And you do not know how many times, and I don't have to fight it off for long,
Mm-hmm.
but there's that addict. Well, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because before that, I'm like, well, I don't even know where to get it, so I don't. And now there is a place
Mm.
in my addict mind of where
Mm-hmm.
I could go.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really strange is it's never about the opiates.
Mm-mm.
I never craved the opiates.
Mm.
And I think it's because of the physical withdrawals that I went through from it. I will never forget how bad it was.
Mm-hmm.
But marijuana always helped everything.
Mm.
But like you said, all these things are gateways. One day it's not going to be enough just to do that one thing that you thought would help. You're going to move on to different things, and it's just going to take you right back. It's just going to take you right back, because everybody, I mean, even out there at that apartment, there was a guy that done it too. And he's like, "Why not? Didn't you say you were an opiate addict?" I said, "No, I'm an addict. I'm an addict."
Mm-hmm.
And I told him the phrase, if I smoke that right now, might not be enough someday.
Mm-hmm.
I might be looking somewhere else. And thank God that I have that in my mind, and that I've been taught that in my recovery to know, you know, uh, that's the stove. Yeah, no, you
Mm.
don't want to touch it.
Yeah,
So,
wouldn't it be nice to be able to use differently?
see, and I think
Right?
about that. The
Mm-hmm.
normies that can
Yeah.
just go out to the bar and drink, or someone who can smoke a joint once a month, or
Yeah.
take pain pills like they're supposed to be taken. I would not know.
Yeah. What's that like? What's
Yeah,
that like? That's a different
yeah,
world. That's a different world for you.
yeah,
They become your have to instead of want to.
Yeah, and even, what I put my body through, even when I've been in the hospital with serious stuff going on, like when I got out of treatment, I hurt my shoulder. I needed shoulder surgery,
Mm.
and I got put in the hospital for my pancreas because of all the pills I took
Mhm.
had destroyed my body.
Mhm.
And yeah, and even just leaving there from the monitored pain medication that I had in there, I was right back full blown withdrawal when I got out of there.
Oof.
And I called my sponsor. I'm like, what is happening? I was only in there for 2 days and they gave me, a shot, yesterday and a shot today. And she's like, your body's like, ooh, there it is.
Mhm.
I want more of that.
Mhm.
It's not about your mind. Your body remembers that. Your
Mhm.
body is what is craving that.
Mhm.
So now I know I don't care if my leg gets blown off. I'm not getting any type
Ibuprofen all
of
the way.
medication. Pretty much. Pretty much.
That
And
makes
you know what's
sense.
weird is I'm in that frame of mind now to where I'll get off work and I'll go in and I'll sit on the couch and like, oh God, my back hurts so bad. And I'm thinking, why haven't I taken ibuprofen? It's almost like I have just like, nope, I'm good. I'm thinking, I can take an ibuprofen.
Mhm.
And then I go in there and take it. I'm all, duh. And then I sit down and it helps. And it's like, I don't know why, but
Forget sometimes. Yeah.
yeah,
That's not the first
it's
place
like
that
I'm
your mind
used to
goes
just
to.
white knuckling it,
Yeah.
thinking, oh, okay, I got this. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, your
wait,
mind's not going to the first place. Like, we'll take something, right?
yeah,
Let's go get a prescription, or
yeah,
go open up that bottle, or maybe you drop something somewhere. It's not going
yeah,
back to that anymore. You're creating those new neural pathways that don't go
hmm
right to the addictive thinking.
yep,
And I mean, that's a win. That's a like, oh, phew, finally, gosh, I can have a relief. That little voice gets a little quieter when I
yeah,
show her more and more compassion.
yep.
Yeah. Wendy, you
How
have,
thankful I can be for an ibuprofen.
I
It's amazing.
know.
Oh my
And
God.
the older we get, the more thankful we become for,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, you have given so much of yourself today and through this whole entire process, and I want to let you know how much I honor your story and you for
Thank
coming in
you.
and sharing this with other people who may be considering um, going to treatment, or a family who is struggling with their loved one's use. And is there any hope for them to get clean, for this to, for our story not to have to go that far? Um, do you have any last words of advice for anybody who might be in that
Don't give up.
position? Don't give up.
Don't give up no matter what, because there's going to be stumbling blocks there for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And you just need to know where to put yourself and know when to not.
Yeah.
Know when do you need to talk, when you need to go talk to somebody. You got to recognize those as flags and you have to act on them before it's too late, before
Mm-hmm.
you give in.
Mm-hmm. Recognizing your flags and acting on them, and not
Yep.
giving up. I
Yep.
love it. I love it. All right. Well, I know you've got stuff to get back to, and we've got a Sunday afternoon to go enjoy. So, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. What a beautiful story. I appreciate you, and so glad that you're here to tell it. And
Yeah. Me
congratulations,
too.
8 years coming up. So,
Yep. I just got goosebumps.
woo!
I just got goosebumps.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Excited.
yeah. That's beautiful. It's amazing.
Yep.
Congratulations. You should be
Thank you.
really super proud of yourself. That's awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie.
You bet.